Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr. Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast.
Well, Love's a Secret Weapon podcast listeners, welcome back. And today we're trying something a little bit different. You'll not only be able to hear us, but you'll also be able to see us as we chat with our very special musical guest, Willie Aron. Willie has had a fascinating and diverse career in music, and he's here to speak with us about it all. Willie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here. Hi, Donna, and hi, Adam.
Hi, Willie.
It's been a while with Donna. I love you.
I love you too, honey. May I, and I love you, Dr. Adam. And let's make this a love fest. And just for our listeners, this is our first time doing this particular way of communicating. And we hope you all enjoy, seeing as well as listening, and having that extra sensory, experience, and see all of our imperfections, right?
Well, we thought with 70 plus episodes, we wanted to try something new. So thank you, Willie, for indulging us in this. But I want to start with how you two know each other before we sort of go back in time to sort of revisit your musical career, Willie. How did you two meet, Donna and Willie?
Before we go on, I have this little Chihuahua here, Cooper.
That's
he needs some special attention, so I'm just petting him as we talk.
That's okay. I've got a Lucy who is to the left of me, who is a cavoodle and is also requiring attention, and a chicken stick while we're talking.
There you go. So Donna and I met, and correct me, Donna, if I get any of the facts wrong. We met some years ago through a mutual friend named Dominic Priori, who is a musical historian, written a bunch of books on the Los Angeles music history. Dominic and I have been friends for, I'd probably say about 15 years. And some years ago, Donna got invited to participate in Tiki Oasis, a big musical festival in San Diego. And Dominic asked if I sort of be the music director and put a band together. So I did, and we did a little deep dive into some of Donna's old recordings with David Axelrod and some of the Capitol singles and stuff. And I just felt instantly connected both to Donna and to her husband, Jared. And, it's been a nice, it's been a while since we've connected, but I would say that we've got a very, a pretty instantaneous bond that we had.
I think there is kind of, how do you say, sisterhood, brotherhood going on.
Absolutely.
Here.
Absolutely.
It was pretty immediate, Dr. Adam. And yes, and besides the musical connection with you and Dom, that I understand how many Dodger games you went to.
Oh my God. Yeah. Baseball is big. That's a big part of, baseball is a big part of the thing that connected Dominic and I. And now it turns out he's been working at Dodger Stadium for the last couple of years. He's been an usher. He's still employed there as an usher the last couple of years, I think. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So whenever I go, I try to make time to head over to where he's at and say hi. And,
that is true passion.
Absolutely, yes.
Oh my goodness. I can only imagine the next book that he's writing is going to have something to do with not only baseball, but a home run and however many people that are, in his view, and how many good catchers of those peanut bags, when you
It's true.
That'll definitely form a plot point.
Yes,
but music is the thing that just kind of above everything besides my family and stuff. Music is the thing that just has animated, a good chunk of my life as a now 60-year-old adult male.
Tell me. Now, when we started working together, Willie, we met at a rehearsal studio in Pasadena. Right. And fortunately, the Tiki Oasis people afforded me the opportunity to have much rehearsal because I hadn't performed a concert in many decades, shall we say. And the reason I was doing it was because of Dom's and my book launch of Pop 60s. And we were going to, turn that into an occasion. And so we started, if you don't mind, I'll just reminisce with you.
Of course.
Okay, so we started, and oh my goodness, you showed up and you had a cast on your foot.
Oh, right. I think was that when I had a heel spur surgery or something?
Yes. Yeah. And I hope it was on your left foot because you were driving a long distance.
It was on my left foot, yes. Yes, it was.
And I mean, Willie lives on the west side of Los Angeles, and to come to Pasadena, I mean, that was kind of a midpoint for all of us to congregate. But it's you and Dom and I started 4 months previous to the concert.
Yes.
Beginning the process, because I had not really done anything like that in so very long.
Yeah.
And then we got together a few times, selected the songs.
Right.
And the other thing is that in all my career, which was, as a young person, I never had a musical director. You were the first, you were the numero uno. And it was like, a lifetime dream of mine to have, associated with a musical director in my career. Whenever I traveled, it's kind of like I had to take on that responsibility as well as performing and rehearse whomever I had to, work with in whatever city or whatever occasion. So that was such a relief for me, Willie, to know that you're on guitar, you're on keyboard, and the songs, or you learned the songs and you knew them, and you could speak in behalf of me, and I could just be concerned about vocalizing.
Right.
Remembering the words, right?
That's right. I mean, that's sort of one of the things I love to do is just sort of be, for lack of a better term, like a Swiss Army knife, just somebody that just solves other people's musical problems or musical, dilemmas and or challenges. And it's something that it's a skill set that I am very, very proud of having. And also I respond to people's personalities and I'm very much interested in sort of like spiritual psychology. And I think that Donna and I and Jared, I think we just all kind of clicked on an interpersonal level as well as musical level. But just the personalities are very simpatico. And so when that happens, it just makes things really easy and really pleasurable.
Thank you so much for bringing that out. I mean, I do think that, between you and Dr. Adam, whom you're just meeting and getting acquainted with, that's the same thing for me. I call it a heart connection. There's a familiarity, even if you've never been together physically in this lifetime, but it's almost instantaneous, that feeling of
Sounds like you're having a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, it's relaxing, it's refreshing.
I mean, here's what I've learned as I've been a composer, I've been a performer, a songwriter, a producer, a session musician, being in a lot of bands. It's very important for me to feel part of a team, and it's important for me to kind of plug in whatever. I don't want to say the word deficit, but if there is something that needs to be plugged in, that's what I like to do. But I like to do it in a context where I really understand the dynamic of what's going on interpersonally, and I've just always had that kind of gift and that interest. So you connect.
You're a true collaborator.
Thank you. I mean, I feel that's a strength of mine, and also I'm now starting to kind of take that one step further, as Donna knows, I have a duo, a band called The Holy Brothers.
Yes.
With my partner and friend Marvin Etzioni, who is formerly of Lone Justice. So he and I, we put out one album back in 2017 called My Name is Sparkle, and we just finished our second album. Yeah, we just finished. I'll send it to you when we're done.
Thank you.
It's called High in My Balloon, and this is a record of kind of redemption in a way, because as Donna knows, I lost my wife in November of 2018. As you came to the memorial service, Donna, you and Jared.
I do.
And this was happening shortly afterwards. Marvin was diagnosed with leukemia, which he survived, and he's in remission. So rather than sort of traverse down the the darker paths of both of those things, illness and losing a spouse, both of which have their requisite dark paths, we chose to kind of focus on the redemptive part of that. In Marvin's case, he there's a song on the album called Sunshine in My Veins, which literally deals with him having to go through chemo. So it's literally Sunshine in My Veins is a quite literal thing happening to him, as it's saving his life. And then when he found out that he was going to survive, when he found out that everything had sort of moved in a positive direction, he wrote this song called High in My Balloon for the album. So we've just kind of, and in my case also, just as a widower and a parent of now 15-year-old twins, there's a lot of paths a person can go down when they experience either loss of a spouse, in my case, and also the illness of my collaborator and dear friend. We just sort of chose to focus on the positive aspects of, like, what's going to happen now. I joined a grief support group in the face of my loss, which I think also helped pave the way for me to find true love again, which I did in July of 2018. I've had a wonderful woman named Belinda, who I met in July of 2019, rather, sorry.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we've been together ever since, blissfully happy. I got very fortunate. And so I think part of that.
It's the light in you that attracted the light in her, and the light all around you, Willie.
Thank you, Donna. I believe that to be true. Honestly, I really do believe that to be true.
Because when you practice your faith, Dr. Adam and I talk about this quite a bit. When you practice your faith and you surrender to the source, we have the light in us. That's a gift. It's a gift. But it's minuscule compared to the source. And so when one surrenders and asks for this connection from source to the gift inside us, we're filled. And we have to remind each other, because we're living in the density of Mother Earth, which it has so many distractions. And so you're constantly making choices, but that light, it really helps you focus and stay on your path,
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I think to stay connected to whatever, in my case, sort of like a connection to the divine, whatever one calls that. If you call it source, I just call it sort of something that supersedes what is on this plane. I definitely am a believer in something that is beyond, the physical realm. And so my connection to that has helped me to sort of stay engaged and interested and still passionate about music. Music is just one of those gifts that I think transcends like mere rational thought. I mean, there's no real rational explanation for music, right? Or for the arts. There's no, if you were to kind of take a survey of like, what is a physical need? Well, we don't need it necessarily on a physical level to survive, like we need food and water. right? Yet, throughout the millennia, we seem to not be able to survive without music. We seem to not be able to survive as a species without some connection to the creative arts.
It's
I
a
think
frequency.
Yeah, it's a frequency, it's a vibration. It is something that we just cannot seem to want to live without, even in the when COVID hit, which was a devastation for the entire planet. Vinyl record sales like went through the roof. I became one of those people that just like went kind of crazy. I stayed home and wrote songs and played piano and played, instruments, but I also kind of got back into kind of the history of recorded music.
Well, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
Because I do, also, Dr. Adam, excuse our intimacy at this moment. You're being so patient and kind.
Okay, it's okay. I've got my list of questions. Don't worry, we're going to come to them.
Great.
Okay, my love. And so, Willie, this ability to resonate in a very high vibration and tap into this frequency of actually it's photonic light coming in. There have been, shall we say, what do you call them? Wait a minute, there was a movie, the highest intelligence, the highest frequency of avatars that connect with, let's say, an old soul. For instance, little Mozart, when he's 3 or 4 years old, and every note he writes, it has absolutely, no correction whatsoever, and he's able to hear 350 pieces, 100 in the orchestra, 250 in a chorus, and he's called a genius, but I really think that he's tapped into the frequency of the source, or whatever God, goddess, all that is, the universe, the galaxies.
Yeah.
And yes, and so the great conductor in the sky, is really the master of how our blood flows, how our heart beats. Not to call in my son, who is a drummer, but
right.
Recently I went to a concert that he was in. He was playing with Beck, and I don't really go to concerts anymore, but because it's my son, fortunately, I did. And I swear it felt like he was setting the heartbeat in this huge crowd of either 20,000 people, and you could feel it. It's not just the physical, but like you say, it transcends the heart and the soul and the connection of the infinite, and that's why music is so vitally important. Please.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I heard someone explain it once as, without art, whether it's music, whatever it is, we're spiritually bereft. And I think that's so true. And what you're talking about, Willie, that whole idea of COVID, where people needed this as a lifeline, whether it was making music, whether it was listening to music. Interestingly, I think at that time we didn't look after our artists enough. They didn't get enough here in Australia, enough government support, because obviously gigs and everything just ground to a halt. But we all needed that at that time. And for whatever reason that connection is, it's so important. And so I think I want to just take you back a bit briefly. First of all, great name for your duo. Can you tell us quickly how you came up with that name?
Sure, it's actually a great story. So I'm Jewish, and I'm also a cantor at a synagogue. Been for many years.
Oh my!
And the rabbi Mordecai Finley is like a second father to me. He and his wife Meirav, and Leonard Cohen was also a member of this synagogue for the last 10 years of his life. So I got to be very close with Leonard. And one day during services, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but I'm going to call Rabbi Finley sort of like the John Coltrane or Miles Davis of rabbis.
Well, wait a minute. With Finley
Yeah.
sounds like he's from Ireland.
Well, his father was by birth an Irish Catholic who converted
Okay.
to Judaism, and his mother was an English Jewish woman.
Okay.
So his he became a rabbi, and he is for the only way I can describe it is he's just an absolute brilliant mind who delves mostly with spiritual psychology. He's not a lot of modern religion is sort of like either politically focused or environmentally focused, and those are all valid and you know and welcome. But in Rabbi Finley's case, it's more about like sort of the soul and dealing with spiritual psychology, which is what I think attracted Leonard to him. And they were very close the last 10 years of Leonard's life. So anyways, one day during services, both Rabbi Finley and Leonard saw Marvin and I decked in our suits and our fedoras. And I'm trying to remember whether it was Rabbi Finley or Leonard, but one of them said, "It's the Holy Brothers." So Marvin and I looked at each other. I go, I think we need to start a band together. So we dubbed ourselves the Holy Brothers, but instead of the, we added an extra E, because there were already a bunch of other bands called the Holy Brothers, and we didn't want to be like typecast as like a religious group or a gospel band. We just wanted to kind of tap into something though that sort of went beyond the ephemeral. You know what I mean? And Marvin's songs are very deep and very much kind of tapped into that tapestry of, you know, that thing that happens when two people, and we've been close since 1978 when I was a 15-year-old at Fairfax High, and he was working at the record store across the street, Aron's Records, and we met and we sort of formed a bond then. But there's a thing that people have when they sing together. When I think of like the Everly Brothers, when I think of, you know, the early Beatles stuff, or those things that are, or gospel groups or country duos, like you know, like the Louvin Brothers, that thing that very elemental thing when two people sing together,
Magic.
that is magic, right? And so exactly right. And so we wanted to do something that was very unadorned and very intimate, and put the focus on just the voices, and almost have the two voices be the orchestra. You know, and that's the thing where a lot of music now is very dense and very layered and almost like tailored for like an ADD generation, which we find in, I think, a lot of art, and a lot of like the movies, everything's like CGI generated or AI generated, and it's very dense, and it's very much like it doesn't allow the listener or the viewer to fill in their own space
and to expand, you know, this expansiveness. Yes.
So we wanted to do that. We wanted to kind of keep the instrumentation to a minimal level, and we wanted to let the listener kind of be the third member of the group and fill in the space themselves, which I say takes a certain level of boldness to go, we're not going to overstuff the sonic picture with a lot of stuff. So that's kind of still our, you know, our mission statement. And, you know, when you hear our records, you'll sort of hear there's sorry, the dogs are barking. There is that kind of thing where you have to kind of have the stamina to kind of listen and not be distracted by a lot of overproduction.
Yes.
You know?
Well, you know, I've been listening to this artist called Billy Strings, and he comes from a bluegrass environment, and he's very versatile. He's very diverse, but he specializes in the bluegrass, and that to me is like gospel. You know, it's the connection with spirit as well as connection with all the hearts in the room. And it's very elevating. And, you know, again, you take it with you. It increases your vibration. And And it fills you with so much love. And and the response that you see, if Adam, are you aware of Billy Strings?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, he's just a phenomenon. I started watching him, and he was like performing on porches, and with maybe 20 people on a lawn, lawn chairs. And now he's playing stadiums. And I'm so happy because he has an audience that's so down to earth and so honest and genuine. So they love the authenticity. And I think that's what you're talking about, Willie.
Yes, Donna, exactly right. Yeah. I mean, that's a very loaded word for me, because there's a lot of people that try really hard I think too hard to be authentic. But when you're really authentic, you don't have to like announce it. And a guy like Billy Strings, I think really, he just brings it. And I love the idea that people can pretty much tell when they're being snowed and when they're being delivered the goods. And
Same thing with Leonard Cohen.
Huh?
Same thing with Leonard Cohen.
Exactly right. I mean, I learned that just from being around him, the Marvin and I being around him to the extent that we were. There was nothing phony about that guy. Not one iota of phoniness.
Of course, he went through the monastery for how many years?
Right. He became an ordained Zen monk, and that was a very, very illuminating and difficult time for him, because after he was there for the 9 years that he kind of like he was done with music, he had sort of like had everything he could, he had sort of had it up to here. He moved to Mount Baldy. He was studying with the Roshi up there in Mount Baldy, and while he was there, he was being systematically ripped off by his
materialism. Yeah.
Right.
How succinct though, because I'm very good friends with a Zen monastery abbot, as well as a wonderful female monk. And there's no materialism. They don't own anything.
Right. It's
and
a very aesthetic
how ironic, that he goes in that direction and this happens to him. But he didn't think of himself as a victim, did he?
Well, here's the ironic thing is, he had come to the reason that he joined our synagogue was I met him, my friend Larry Klein, who was a brilliant record producer and bass player, and Larry used to be married to Joni Mitchell. They were married for 10 years. Larry had gotten remarried to a wonderful Brazilian singer named Luciana Souza. This was back in 2006. So Rabbi Finley and Larry had been a member of the synagogue, and I'd known him then. Larry had gotten remarried. The Rabbi Finley had officiated the ceremony, and I was sitting next to Leonard at the reception table. It was my wife and I, and Leonard and his girlfriend Anjani Thomas, and Rabbi Finley to the right of us. And I had, and he was very taken with Finley's sermon. I was playing with a woman named Rebecca Pidgeon at that time, the singer-songwriter. She was married to David Mamet, still married to David Mamet. Leonard had told Rebecca and her husband David Mamet how much he had liked them, like their acting. And I said, well, Rebecca and I are playing at Hotel Cafe in Hollywood on Tuesday night. The wedding was on a Sunday. He goes, well, where's Hotel Cafe? And I gave him the address, never in a million years thinking that he would show up. Boom, 2 days later, he's sitting right in front of me. I'm on the stage and he's right there. And I'm doing everything I can to keep my composure. But he loved the show, and he had started coming to services pretty much on a regular basis every Saturday for, anytime he was in town. And he went back on the road, and he more than made up the money that he had lost. And I don't know if it was because of the spiritual work he had done, or the spiritual preparation he had done, in his work as a Zen monk, but really his work with Rabbi Finley, they were very close. And
he was rewarded by God.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is the greatest as they call the third act. It was the greatest third act that I've ever experienced.
And did you I was just going to say, Willie, did you do some work with Leonard?
Yeah. So during that time, he had asked me to co-produce some tracks with him and his ex-girlfriend Anjani. They had split up, but they'd still worked together. So we had I co-produced some tracks for them that are still unreleased. But it was a very gratifying experience to work with him.
So wait a minute, they're not released. What's holding it up?
Well, there's all sorts of stuff going on between his manager and Leonard's kids, who are the beneficiaries of the estate. So I'm not at liberty to kind of like go into any details, but I know that for I don't know when we'll ever see the light of, if we'll ever see those tracks. Oh my God! I did get to work with them, and that was a great experience. So I'll always have that. Whatever happens to those recordings in the future, I have no control over.
Yeah,
I would. Oh my gosh, he's such a healer. It would be so marvelous for that music to be released, especially now on the planet. Where we need so much healing.
We sure do.
By the way, I wanted to kind of go in a tiny bit of a direction with Dr. Adam, and because when you talked about loss, I just was made aware of an excerpt of a television news show in Australia that Dr. Adam was invited on to discuss loss and grief. I thought, Dr. Adam's specialty is empathy, and we talk about empathy a lot. But Adam, do you want to expound on, that subject and relate it to what Willie was saying?
Yeah, thank you for the lead in for that. It was very unexpected. I'd done some work, and this is going to sound, stay with me, everyone listening, because it's not grief and loss in the sense of, say, the loss of actual relationships, but I did some work looking at art and looking at how we relate to fictional work and what happens when those bonds we form with fictional characters or books, movies, TV, whatever, when they end. And this idea that we do go into this sense of loss and this sense of downheartedness or emptiness because we have bonded with those relationships, which are interestingly not real, but to us they kind of are real. So we're not talking about grief of the loss of an actual person, but the idea of that we do grieve the losses or at least experience a sense of loss when our connection to that art is no longer there for whatever reason. A series ends or a celebrity or a musician or someone we've bonded with has passed on. And I think it is an interesting one because we often speak, Donna, on the podcast, we often have fan guests come on and talk about the connection they had to your music, for example, or your work, and how very real that was, and how that can either be, sort of a background to their life experiences, or it could have been a form of identity. It obviously gave them a whole range of positive emotions. So this idea that we do connect with these fictional worlds or these worlds that we don't necessarily have that reciprocity of a real relationship. And so what happens, when it ends? And I'm sure you probably find that, Willie, in your music and your work, you have that connection to an audience and they take that with them. And you don't always know what that might be. You have that connection in the moment, but they'll take that with them and that will continue and be an important part of their life.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I think that one thing that I've always held as an axiom is you never talk down to your audience. You never, you have to have reverence for the connective act between audience and performer. And I think that we have grown up, let's say since the 50s, since like the rock music, rock and roll music phenomenon, onwards from, let's say, 1955 on to the present, there's been like an ebb and flow between the connection between performer and audience member. And I think there was a period where the audience could not possibly relate to what the performer was doing, either because it was either too technically complex or it was beyond the comprehension of a person going, there's no possible way I could hope to do what this person does. Whereas like if you go to a club or you go to let's say to a performance, like an intimate, performance setting, like Marvin and I just played at a place in West Hills, California, in the Valley, called the Guitar Merchant. And we played to about 35, 40 people. It was packed. And we had, I mean, if I may say so, we kind of had them at every breath, every moment. And we played at the Calgary Folk Festival in 2017 to like 10,000 people. And it's sort of a charge to be able to play for that many people. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily better than connecting with like 30 or 40 people that really are there to hear what you're doing and to experience what you're doing. So I know I'm speaking for Marvin too. We really are trying to create intimacy. And I think that's the thing that people, like Donna said earlier, I think people really need that connection between performer and people who are taking in the music or taking in the art.
Yeah.
And I really like to, I hate to, to sort of like democratize the field where it's not like I'm the exalted performer and you're the patron. There's something about that kind of rings false to me, especially now. Like Donna, you were saying earlier, like we need this more than ever, and I really believe that. Symbiosis. Yes, exactly right. And so I feel like it's kind of my mission as a whatever context I'm in. I also play in this band called The Third Mind, which is Dave Alvin, my dear friend Dave Alvin from the Blasters, my friend Victor Krimenacher from Camper Van Beethoven, a guy named Michael Jerome, David Immergluck from Counting Crows. We've they brought me in for their second album, and we're going up to San Francisco this weekend to play something called Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, which is a big free festival that they do. And I wouldn't be surprised that Billy Strings has played this festival in the past. But we'll be sharing the stage with Ricky Lee Jones, with Emmylou Harris, with a bunch of different performers. It's a free festival at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. They're expecting like 150,000 people over the 3 days. Wow. But that's the other challenge, again, intimacy. And this is a sort of a psychedelic exploratory thing where I'm in the background. I'm not singing. There's a great singer, Jessie Sykes. She's the lead singer, amazing singer. I'm going to be just playing organ and keyboards in this band. And again, trying to create like sort of an intimacy with, a sea of people. But that's been my whole mission, is to try to never lose sight of that intimate connection between performer and audience.
Yeah, because Donna, how did you, I was just going to say, to follow that up, I was thinking of you that you've performed in the smaller venues. You've performed particularly, in the 60s in these big venues. How did you connect to those audiences at the bigger level, let's say? What's your...
So you talking to me or to Donna?
Oh, Donna first, and then
Donna, definitely.
Yeah, I would. Well, I'll answer your question, but before, I would just like to lay some groundwork, because at one point I was very interested in amphitheaters, and I started studying the Greek amphitheaters that are 3,500 years old. And what I discovered was that the venue was created to bring in psychology, and the play was directed toward patients that were brought in to catacombs under the stage so they could hear the actors above them speaking to the audience, but giving them the message, the truth, the information, the knowledge, the wisdom. And that's the origin of theater to me. And so, my whole experience of performing is connecting, eye to eye, being able to select, well, sometimes a light, kind of obscures your vision, but when you find a set of eyes out there that you connect with, and I would, as a small child, I would find someone directly in front of me. I would find someone to the right and to the left of me, and I would direct my connection that way. And I don't know, if someone in the very back received the same message, but yeah, that's how I felt. It was like yes, it's intimacy, but it's that you create this, like, okay, intimacy is one-on-one. I think the best performers for me are the ones that make you feel like they're performing right to you.
Yeah.
And there's a spark, there's an ember, that lights a flame inside you and keeps that flame burning. And I one other thing, I did see a performance on YouTube. I'm a real YouTube junkie now. I guess since pandemic, it's like it's kind of my core go-to. But I've been seeing a few Glastonbury concerts, and there's like 500,000 people in the audience there, and apparently there is kind of a vortex of energy in Glastonbury that maybe isn't spoken of, but is definitely there. And I believe probably most great theaters all over the world, are either unknowingly or how do you say that? Intentionally placed on that site, because there's an energy field there, not just acoustics, there's a deeper reason to, put that stage or put that, venue right there. Anyway, what I noticed is I was watching Jack White, who was performing not that long ago. I think it was his last European tour. And he started singing one of his songs at the end of the concert. And as he was, leaving the stage, everyone in the audience started chanting the song that he was singing. And as he departed the stage, they kept chanting it and chanting it, and it's almost like what do you call that when you have the image, when you're not there but you can project an image? Do you know what I'm talking about?
In terms of him leaving it there as he was gone, but because he had.
Well, yes, but even like when Elvis passed, he was gone, and they projected an image of him, a hologram.
Oh, a hologram,
oh, right.
Right, hologram.
Sorry, delay, but it's almost a holographic, experience. When that person that has projected that energy to all of these people, even when he's physically gone, that his energy is still there, and it keeps, it's a well, I can just say it's a loving energy that the audience just doesn't want to let go of. And so they just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And I think it's so wonderful. You see performers all the time. The greatest satisfaction is when an audience sings along with you.
Mm.
And when Will and I were at Tiki Oasis,
Mm.
we chose some songs. When we came to Shaken All Over, which I did on Shindig, remember, Willie?
Yep.
Everyone knew that song and they sang along, and I was just delighted. It's like you just want to jump up and down for joy.
Well, you know, Adam, I don't know if you've seen any of the YouTube performances of Donna with us at Tiki Oasis.
I have, yeah.
I mean, I can just speak as a member of that of the band, looking out into the crowd. I mean, the Donna was absolutely, and I mean this, you know, you were absolutely magnetic, Donna, and the it's not just magnetism. I mean, people were just hanging on. I could see all the way into the back. And there were, you know, I would say, you know, I don't know, 1,000 people, 1,500. I don't even know what the number was, but the audience was packed. They hung on to every word, and Donna brought it. I mean, she really, like, you know, delivered the goods in a way that wasn't fake. It was
with Dick Dickerson, with
Dick
your
Dickerson, yep. Right. And Debbie Fair from Brian Wilson's band, and Teresa Cowles and Jim Laspiza. And I mean, we had a really great band, and everybody, and these are all like lifers like me, like just people that we've all been in music for so long. And not only are we professional musicians, but we're fans. And that love, and that's what Jack White is. And that's what a guy like Questlove is. You know, Jack White has been able to parlay his absolute love of music into a career. He has his own careers, you know, obviously he had the White Stripes. He has his own great solo career. He has a record company called Third Man Records, you know, and he has a magazine called Maggot Brain. And these are for people like me who are complete fanatics, you know, like who can't get enough of like all forms of music. And Questlove, you know, who also is just a music collector, fanatic. He had his, you know, he made his career in the Roots. Then he's, you know, now he's a producer. And if you saw Summer of Soul, either of you, you know,
Perfect.
Go on, Donna.
That absolutely. I mean, for our listeners, please look that up, because the Summer of Soul. Now that was in tandem, same time as Woodstock,
Right?
And I know 50,000 people assembled for six weekends in a row.
Right.
300,000 people in total. Not one incident.
That's right.
Nothing. No police intervention. It was a completely civil, you know, gathering with, you name the artist. My gosh,
Sly Stone, Nina Simone, Stevie Wonder, you know, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Fifth Dimension. Every time I see the Fifth Dimension doing Aquarius in that setting, I promise you, I've seen it 3 times. I bawl my eyes out every time, because of, you lived that time period. But for me, you know, I think about like the promise of that dream of togetherness, of racial togetherness, of cultural togetherness. And obviously, you know, unfortunately, we're more polarized now than we ever were, I think.
Let me I'm trying to intercept again, please.
Sorry, go on.
Okay, we have entered the age of Aquarius for real.
I hope you're right.
This has definitely, you know, that was a precursor, obviously, because, you know, somebody like an Andrew Lloyd Webber, you know, they have the, you know, insight, foresight, whatever, and, you know, to write such, you know, innovative and futuristic music. But we physically are entering the age of Aquarius, which will be our next epoch. And with the Aquarian energy exactly representing we are all one, including every little detail of Mother Nature, that no one is separate, not humans. We're from the earth. We came from the earth, we return to the earth, and of course our connection with heaven. But just, that consciousness, and as you say, Willie, the reverence, for all life, and letting go. And by the way, it's kind of like oil and water, and I'm not being trite in saying this, because this is very serious right now. A lot of us are facing a lot of darkness. You just went through it, and it takes so much courage to face the darkness within you. And I believe that pandemic, as you were saying, so many of us went in and searched our souls and had the courage to see, maybe some of the dark side. If not, then I think the separation is really like the oil and water, for clarity, the density of some, in my humble opinion, is the reason for the separation. And it comes from a different energy. There is a higher frequency that's happening. And for our listeners, I'll just verify that maybe I've spoken about this, Dr. Adam, you can remind me. But I, at one point, almost 25 or more years ago, stumbled onto a book called The Shift. And Willie, this might be really interesting for you, because, in terms of your body's chakra system, starting with the crown and ending with the root, and the heart is in the center. Well, each chakra in our body system resonates with a different sound. And in the past, the sound was generating E flat, and E flat is associated with the solar plexus. And the solar plexus is where your digestive system is. And I think a lot of us have been having gut issues, and hopefully it doesn't manifest into disease or something terminal. But, for anyone who is suffering, from anything, in their whole digestive system and microbiome, that is the energy we are evolving out of, according to what I've been exposed to in this knowledge, in this information. And the energy we are rising into is F sharp. And F sharp relates to your heart. And so I think, and it's ironic, I've written a few songs, and like one of the first songs that I wrote probably 30 years ago or more, no, more than that, gosh, long time ago, happened to be in the key of F sharp, because I think, that's how I came in. What do you think? Did you come in from heart energy, Adam? And Willie, did you come in from heart energy, or do you think intellectual, or maybe a combination?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. You go first, Willie.
Well,
I've got to think about this.
I can tell you that I am I think energetically, I'm an emotional person. I'm a feeling person.
The heart.
I think that's where, So I think that's where my first sort of impulse wants to go. But I also feel like the dance between the intellect and the spirit is where I live and I reside, because one of the things that as a now 60-year-old man, I believe that I don't like to lead with my feelings, because feelings change. If you act on, let's say anger or resentment is like your first impulse. You can reframe if you base your life just on the story that your emotions tell you. I think it's a very dangerous place potentially dangerous place to wind up. So I try to metabolize the dance between what my feelings, what my heart tells me, and what my intellect is guiding me towards. So there's a set of principles that I think we need to, if we're sort of like elevated beings, the way Donna is sort of like described, that we're kind of like, if we're entering into this Aquarian age that you're talking about, I think if we refine the dance that we do between the intellect and the spirit, I think that's the place where, for me, I'm just speaking for myself, that's where I do my best work, not only artistically but as a person.
Yeah.
Is
I
kind of the
think
balance.
yeah, it's like mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit.
Yeah.
It's like figure 8, mind, body, spirit, mind, body,
Right.
spirit. Adam, your turn.
Okay. That's interesting. I think I'm probably very similar to you, Willie, that whole idea that lead with the heart, but I'm also in this very sort of intellectual world, I guess, and I've got to pull back from that sometimes, because I think there's a difference between what I see as sort of thought versus what's kind of behind those thoughts. I was kind of talking a bit about this over the podcast, this idea that sometimes we treat all our thoughts as real and an accurate representation of what's, going on. And if we have a thought, we have to attend to it because it must be important, and kind of discerning between what are the useful thoughts, or what are the thoughts that can guide you, or the intuitions that can guide you, and what perhaps is all the kind of junk that we've built up thought-wise over time. And I've sort of sometimes used this sort of metaphor when I'm speaking to some of my students, this idea that we sometimes almost need to treat our thoughts like emails. Some emails are really important and need to be attended to right away. Some can be put to the side for another use, and some are just spam and can be treated that way. And for me, it's been this real realization of being more discerning as to which thoughts are which. And that idea, I think Eckhart Tolle talks about, that idea that we can look at our thoughts. So therefore, we're not only our thoughts, where there's something beyond that ego, which I know Donna and I have spoken about a lot. So I think that's been really important, particularly in the pandemic, where people's fears have just been running rampant. This ability to step back and acknowledge those fears, or to acknowledge that unease or that sadness or whatever people are going through during this time, but also to keep it almost in a balanced awareness as well, so we don't become so fused with those thoughts we can't see the difference between the ones that are useful and the ones that are just letting our anxieties, run rampant at the same time.
I love this, what you're saying. I love this, and I'll tell you how it applies to me. In between my work as a musician, I obtained a master's in clinical psychology back in like 1997. So I thought, okay, well, if the music thing doesn't pan out, I'll become a therapist, a psychotherapist. I had serious interest in it. I did plenty of psychotherapeutic work myself, and one of the things that I've learned, and again, I'm just speaking for me, I'm not globalizing it, but for me, perseverating on your past, is, and I've seen people who are stuck in a world, in a narrative of trauma, of psychological trauma, psychic trauma, emotional trauma, that they can't get out of. And so they spend years and thousands of dollars and years in psychotherapy, where they're continually sort of obsessed about whatever trauma was done to them. And I'm not minimizing that that's real. For a lot of people are stuck and they are traumatized. Yeah. But we have to learn, or I have had to learn, some disciplines and some methodology to not get stuck. Like, for example, the year that the year that my wife was dying from cancer, I found out that I was adopted.
Wow.
Yeah. So my parents, who were my adoptive parents, who were both Holocaust survivors, like a different person might have crumbled and might have just gone on some existential search to to find out their parents of origin. I didn't do that. And I still haven't done that because I didn't grow up in deficit. And when I say that, I mean my adoptive parents, I'm going to call them my parents. The ones that chose me, that loved me, that nurtured me, that gave me the life that I enjoy now, that I have now. Those are my parents. So I don't have the existential deficit that maybe somebody else who had a shitty childhood or had a childhood that was full of, that feeling that sometimes children of adoption feel like, or even kids of their birth parents or their place of origin feel that they were born to the wrong family. They energetically, psychically don't feel that they were in the right family. And so when sometimes they go on an existential search to find their birth parents. And sometimes that's a very healing search that ends with some sort of, I hate to use the word closure, but for all intents and purposes, let's say that that's what they find. I didn't have that need. I didn't have that deficit. I felt, and I still feel like the parents that that chose me and nurtured and took care of me, those are my parents. And so I don't have that kind of angst. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that there are, and again, a different person who is going through both, triggers or traumas at the same time. I might have fallen into like a very dark depression. I might have felt a loss of self, a sense of alienation. I didn't feel any of those things because I have done a lot of inner work and a lot of disciplined attention to like strengthening my soul, for lack of a better term,
and tapping your divine feminine energy.
Right, Donna. Right.
That's I think that's so interesting what you say, that you had done that work even before. And I think it's something that we're hopefully seeing more and more, but we haven't always seen in the past. It's this idea that something comes up, something terrible comes up, and we have to fix it. We don't always focus on building those resources before something happens. Because, let's say mental unwellness, for example, we used to consider this idea that you're either mentally unwell on one end of the continuum and then mentally healthy on the other end of the continuum. And the way we consider it now is not that case. You can have sort of mental unwellness on one continuum by itself, from low to high or whatever you want to call it, and then mental health on another continuum. And so someone could have, say, no mental unwellness or mental illness, but not be mentally well or mentally healthy because they haven't built those resources. Or someone who does experience a period of mental unwellness can still have high levels of well-being on that other continuum. And because we often focus on fixing a deficit or something that's wrong, or wait till something breaks to try to fix it, rather than building in people these resources in the beginning, so that when you are faced with those, in many cases, like you said, life-altering moments, the illness of your wife, and finding out this big piece of news. And Donna, I'm going to let you come in a minute, because you both, whether you're aware of it or not, both share that experience there. But, building those resources so when these things do come up, we can have some form of resilience, for want of a better term. But Donna, do share, if you haven't shared before, the adoption thing is a similar story.
Yeah. Actually, I will channel my comment in the way of it, more general, because I believe that we all come in with a certain capacity for a threshold of pain that we can endure. And, and if you are a fragile being, that life experience, you may not be able to cross over that pain threshold without it destroying you. And so, it's almost like building compassion for any one of us who have that capacity, to go into and face, the darkness within. Some of us, have come into this life to reconcile many generations, and and because we just, kind of came in with that criteria. Okay, I guess that's what my job is in this lifetime. And so that pain that one suffers, like Willie, you're saying that you received the love and affection and attention that served you completely so that you could be exactly who you are. And that's the true gift, whether it's your biological parent or a chosen family, or any chosen anyone, whoever serves that purpose. And anyway, that's where I would go, is that individually we each come in with a particular pain threshold, and it's not to be judged.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely, Donna. I mean, one of the things I learned in my grief support group was, and it seems obvious to name it, but I'm going to just say anyways, is that everybody's experience with grief is their own. In other words, even though we were all brought together to do this, to do this work, just because we each shared the experience of losing a spouse, every one of us who experienced that was our own. And there's no sort of expiration date for grief. There's no, I can't even, even though my experience was different than some of the other people in the group, they had lost their spouses quite suddenly, in let's say an accident. I was the only one of that group whose spouse had gone through a prolonged illness. So I watched my wife, have sarcoma, which is a cancer of the soft tissue. She had a tumor in her shoulder, and she had actually was her second bout with it. She had gotten it in 1996, 2 years after we'd gotten married, and it reappeared 20 years later in the same place, but just much more aggressively. So my experience was my own. And, we could come together on a nominal level, but the reason I say that is I'm not an advice giver. And so it's not for me to even though someone else has gone through grief, their own, I can only share what it was like for me to experience my particular pain and grief and loss and the aftermath of it. And it's not for me to tell someone else how to deal with it. Other than just to and if anybody asks, I can tell them, but I feel like, there's a set of disciplines that worked for me that have benefited my life, but that's, I'm not an advice giver. So that's just the thing I wanted to say about that.
That's I was just going to say that's so interesting you say that, because in the empathy research that I sort of do, I look at that idea of past experience and how we bond with other people through past experience. And I think what it sounds like you're saying is on the one hand, there are certain things that happen with grief that many people experience, but we can't presume that even if in your support group, you've lost a spouse and someone else has, it doesn't mean that those experiences are the same, or those griefs are the same, or those processes or whatever we want to call them are the same. And I think that was just listening to you talk about that idea of that you can share your experience and you can listen to that other person, but you're not imposing this idea of I felt that way, therefore they must feel that way.
Correct. And so I remember when I first announced to the group, I met my companion Belinda 8 months after my wife died. Now, some people might think, that's a short amount of time, there's all sorts of prescriptions that we tell ourselves about what is, quote, the right time to find somebody else, or not at all. So when I announced it to the group, everybody was supportive, very supportive, except for one woman. She lost her husband of 35 years, and she was still just right in the middle of it, right in the throes, and the pain was just devastating for her. And she said, quite angrily to me, she goes, I don't approve. I'm just letting you know, I don't approve of this. And, and how are your children going to deal with this? And it strikes me as very selfish.
Oh God.
And so I said in as compassionate a tone as I could muster, I said, I'm not going to mention her name and betray her confidentiality, but I said to her, if you continue, if you're welcome to deal with your grief in whatever way you see fit, and I'm not going to judge it. I ask the same from you. That the way I've chosen to try to find a companion, and I found in my case the absolute ideal companion. I could not be happier. We're very much in love, and Belinda and I are a very strong unit, the two of us, and my kids love her, and we are, she lives with us, and we're very happy together. I said to this woman, I'm going to choose to pursue this, whether with all due respect, whether you approve of it or not. And so that was that was the path that I went on. And, I don't know whether she ever accepted it or not. And I frankly didn't care.
Accepted. You accepted her and had the grace to not react, to her. And, and just be as kind and loving as you possibly could under the circumstances,
That's right.
As you said, if someone is stuck, how much energy do you want to invest? It's,
oh man, it is so true. And it's almost like, well, okay, so I think what you're getting at, of what I'm sensing, is it's almost like an infection. Because negative energy is like, it's infectious, and it's that idea that misery loves company. It's a cliche, but it's true. I find that the older I get, the less tolerance I have for that kind of negativity, and so I just basically
okay. That is perfectly okay. It is perfectly okay, because we are co-creating a world that we choose to live in. That's those who have not chosen, but who happen to remain in a past energy of conflict, then you out of some awareness that is it, I don't even know if you want to use the term loving, but I would say loving,
or compassionate, or something. Yeah. You try I try to have compassion for them and just go, not for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, okay.
I find that, just a tiny glance in your eyes, once you cultivate this intuition, your intuitive sense of energy, where, like you were saying, discernment, and just the idea and compassion gives you that strength, the inner strength to realize where to put your energy. And so just a tiny bit of love coming out of your eye to acknowledge and recognize, that this being has gone as far as they can go at this moment. But you can still give them just that little blink of love, and then go about your way, so that you can take the light and rather than an infection, have this love fest, like we're having now. And I have to say that both of you men have, in the background of, this botanical background that you have,
botanical background and dogs as well.
You are the flowers in my garden, and I thank both of you. And I'm so pleased that we have this special time together. Willie, you have shared so, and we are going to insert Adam's gift of choosing music that edits into our conversation. It underscores the love that we share.
Beautiful.
Yeah, We really appreciate this because I think we've spoken about music, and I do want to talk a bit more about your music, Willie, but we're also speaking about a lot of topics that we mention in the podcast regularly. This idea that when you're talking about compassion or acceptance, that often we think of, compassion or empathy as bonding with people, but a really important part of that is having compassion for yourself. And I think when we have compassion for ourselves, some of those boundaries are almost between people, where you can take on or listen to what they have to say, but you don't have to take that on, because we have this differentiation between ourselves and other people. So on the one hand, compassion or empathy bonds us, but if we're also self-compassionate or self-reflective into how we tick and what we value and what we believe, we don't have to take those things on or see them more as that person's opinion or that person's experience. We have a healthier boundary, I think, rather than bleeding into
I
that.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
Doctor,
very
will you
good.
write me a prescription for that one? We love
But,
it.
it's and just to circle back, and I hope this is a smooth segue, but I'm quite interested in this because you're talking about your parents and that acceptance there. From a young age, you decided, from what I've read, you kind of gravitated to music quite early. How did that come about, and how were your parents involved in that, and how did that start to lead you into, let's say, your first band in the late 70s and early 80s?
So I had started taking piano lessons when I was 6 or 7, 1969 or 70, when I was 6 years old. And I have an older brother, and he was more interested in sports. So he didn't have my brother Simon. He was just like sort of not interested in, I'm not saying he wasn't interested in music, but it just wasn't, he didn't have the aptitude for it. I kind of took to it right away. So I had piano lessons. I had an amazing piano teacher named Professor Michael Quinte. He was an Italian immigrant. And he taught me about music, about classical music. But again, he was more of like a world thinker, and he would talk to me about astronomy and about the cosmos. And I was already kind of interested in the kind of ephemeral parts of the universe from a very young age. I knew that music was just a thing that I didn't know quite specifically what path it would lead me towards, but I just knew I wanted to envelop it. I want to be a part of it. So I remember I studied classical piano from 6 till about 13, 14. And then in the mid 70s, I kind of got hit with rock and roll right away, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, the Who, the Kinks, Dylan, Motown, Ray Charles, Booker T. And at a time when all of my peers were interested in like Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Genesis, I wasn't geared towards that kind of progressive rock thing. I already had kind of an older soul in me, I think. So I was already interested in like black music. I was interested in rock and roll, the roots of it, 50s, 60s, certainly. And then I kind of like the history buff in me kind of went earlier back into, actually, I need to say this because Donna will appreciate this. We had a mutual friend, Donna and I, in common, P.F. Sloan, Phil Sloan. And after Phil passed away, Donna gave me a little figurine of Beethoven that belonged to Phil. Do you remember that? That is on my piano to this day. It's about 10 feet away from me. Hold on. Get it right there.
How beautiful.
This that you gave me,
Oh, honey.
okay, resides on my piano that belonged to Phil Sloan. And my son Eli plays piano now, and so he looks at it when he plays every day. This is the picture here. This little bust of Beethoven. Beethoven was my first musical icon as a 7, 8-year-old. I read every book on Beethoven. I played every sonata. And Phil and I bonded over Beethoven. As you know, Phil's last work was a sort of a tribute to Beethoven.
Well, may I insert something? I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but I'm going to share it with the world. Because the last 2 weeks of Phil's life, Jared, who was like his brother, and I spent that time with him his last days. And it was in November, early November. And I really wanted to give him a sense of holiday. And we knew that, time was running out. So I made like a mock turkey kind of, Thanksgiving dinner. I wanted the house to smell like holiday and but very, very simple. And after we had our meal, I asked him, if we could listen to some music, what would he like? And he said, well, let's listen to, my last work. And so he put on the CD of Beethoven, and that he experienced for 18 years of the last years of his life was the energy of channeling Beethoven.
Right.
Now, he was sitting in his favorite chair. He had a leather chair by a window, and he used to hold court in that chair. And he sat down, but he wasn't very comfortable, and the music was playing, all of his original music. And it was actually a rock opera.
Right.
And he had to rise up because he just wasn't comfortable. And as he rose, both Jared and I saw a vapor behind him of this wild hair and dark circles around his eyes. And actually, Phil, at the end of his life, took on those characteristics of Beethoven. As he rose out of that chair and left the room, Beethoven made his presence known. That was very clear to Jared and I, both witnessing this. And we knew that Beethoven's ability to heal came through Phil and, created this music. It's like being, just being a channel and opening up and being receptive to that, and then becoming the instrument, that manifests it. So, and once Phil passed away, I've forgotten exactly, maybe it was coinciding, but in the Fukushima nuclear, there was a hurricane. I think it was a hurricane, right? That came to shore and disrupted the nuclear energy plant in Fukushima.
Tsunami that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, tsunami. And, it required the entire Fukushima county or, community to evacuate. And I saw on the news, there were hundreds of thousands of people out on the street with very glum looking expressions on their faces. And then there was a tower close by, and there was a man with a big ghetto blaster climbing up this tower, getting to the top, and he started blasting Beethoven's Ninth. And you could see the expressions on the people below. It turned into smiles. It was so transformative. And then I found out that the people in Japan hold Beethoven's Ninth as their premier healing music.
I believe it.
So, of course, my promise to Phil before he passed away was to say somehow, some way, before I close my eyes for the last time, I would love to find some avenue for your beautiful music to be shared with the world and help to heal. So I call on Ludwig von Beethoven to come forward with this music and really kind of integrate himself and Phil's music and this incredible effort, and which we can we can also share with our listeners.
Be awesome. And I mean, like I said, this is just a part of my daily life. This, you know, this little bust of the Phil's that you gave me, Donna, at his memorial service.
I'm so happy.
Yeah. So
that's so lovely. And your children are starting to play music as well.
They are indeed. They are indeed. Yeah. So Adam, you were asking me about the whole you were asking me about my connection to music earlier. So Beethoven was the original inspiration for me as a young pianist. And then I got into rock and roll, and then I joined a bunch of bands. I had a band called The Balancing Act from 1983 to 89 on IRS Records. And then I became a session musician. I toured and played with a bunch of different people, a lot of prominent singer-songwriters. Then I became a film and television composer for about 25 years. And then I, after my wife passed away, I just sort of decided to kind of throw myself back into live performance and being a producer. I just produced a really amazing record by my very best friend. He goes by the name of Todd Lawrence, but his nom de plume in the singer-songwriter world is Milo Binder. So he produced a record. He made a record in 1990, just self-titled Milo Binder. And then I just produced his second album called The Unspeakable Milo Binder. Just finished completing it. It'll be out sometime next year. It is an amazing record. He's a phenomenal singer-songwriter. I was very proud to produce this album. 12 songs of just lyrical depth. If you like stuff like John Prine and Loudon Wainwright, Gordon Lightfoot, he's just Todd is a very, very gifted singer-songwriter. So that'll be coming out next year. The second Holy Brothers album, Behind My Balloon, will be out next year as well.
Exciting.
I played like The Third Mind 2 comes out October 27th. I just feel like in a way, and then I'm going to also really start working on my own music, because part of me is like, I've been such a support player. It's now time for my voice to be heard too, So I feel like I'm kind of operating on in a weird sort of way, like just on like at 60 going on 61, I sort of feel like I'm hitting an artistic peak.
I love it.
And I thank you. And I feel like I'm just part of it is just staying engaged and staying, passionate and focused, and also having to do that and this beautiful relationship I'm in with my love Belinda, and also my two kids, getting them through high school, my twins, my 15-year-olds. I'm just, whatever's happened to me in my life, whatever tragedy and hardships I've endured, I approach this life with gratitude. I approach this life with passion, with purpose, with light, and just wanting to just make a difference. So that's what I'm going to do.
Fantastic. Because when you covered a span, because you've done so much, and there's so many different things. I want to go back to the Balancing Act just sort of briefly, because you were a bit of an underground band. You had 3 albums, but you toured quite extensively, or you
toured a lot during the 80s. Yeah, because that was the way for what they later called either like alternative rock or indie rock. Back in the 80s, they called it college rock, because the only real loyal audiences were college kids. And this was during the time of like REM and the Replacements and that sort of thing. So we found really, I would say a small but devoted audience to what we did. Peter Case, a very good friend of mine, he produced our first album. And the late great Andy Gill from Gang of Four produced our last album. So we were already kind of like attached to kind of like what we felt was like the vanguard of interesting, musicians. I always kind of veered towards whatever the mainstream was. I kind of went not the opposite way, but a little bit kind of off the beaten path. And I've just been lucky to have worked with a lot of, I think, really interesting singer-songwriters, and song is the thing that animates me the most. I gravitate towards working with great songwriters. My partner Marvin Etzioni, is a master songwriter. Todd Lawrence, Milo Binder, the guy that I just produced, is a master songwriter. I've worked with people, like I said, besides Leonard, Ricky Lee Jones, Victoria Williams, Sid Straw, Dave Alvin, Steve Wynn from the Dream Syndicate, Love, I play with them. Sometimes the band Love that Arthur Lee had formed. I've worked with I don't know, Van Dyke Park's a very close friend of mine. Yep, I love him. He's been like a mentor to me too. He was the one who really kind of encouraged me to become a film and TV composer. He said that beautiful brogue of his goes, Willie, you don't want to be on the road in your 50s and 60s. If you want a life of dignity, but dadgummit, you better find a way you can do it, and have a life of dignity and be a film and TV composer, and it'll pay off dividends for you. And he was right. Van Dyke. I mean,
and here you are actually coming into a whole new phase at
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. No, I feel it. And I play with a great band out of Santa Barbara called the Tearaways. They're a bunch of Santa Barbara guys. The drummer is Clem Burke from Blondie. We're going on tour in England in November, December. I just found out that we've got a couple of dates at Abbey Road Studios booked in our off days. Recording there. Yeah. So yeah, I just feel kind of like I've entered into my own, in a weird sort of peak, at age 60, and I think it's sort of like the culmination of my life experience in a way.
You're a crusader of.
What's that, honey? Say again.
You are a crusader for love.
Amen, sister. That's exactly right. I feel that way. I really do.
And you do children's music as well?
I did kids. Yes, I've been a children's artist. I've got a Grammy nomination for producing a kids record for my friend Peter Himmelman, a wonderful singer-songwriter whose father-in-law happens to be Bob Dylan. But I also am a children's educator. I write children's music and develop curriculum for preschools around Los Angeles, around Southern California. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just so engaged and interested in all forms of music. I have a improvisational group called the Illustrious Ancestors with my friend John Kruth. It's all improvised. He recites poetry and we, sort of like back him. I'm a member of this group called the Wild Honey Orchestra that raises funds for autism. We've done tributes to the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Buffalo Springfield with Richie Furay, the band with Garth Hudson, the Lovin' Spoonful before the pandemic. The last thing we did before the pandemic is we backed up the surviving members of the Lovin' Spoonful. Sebastian, Joe Butler, and Steve Boone. Let's see. More possible film soundtracks and TV stuff.
But you did True Blood.
I did some music for True Blood. Yep. Yeah. I did a bunch of episodic television. There was a series called Unsung, an R&B documentary series that I did for 8 seasons with an old partner of mine, Joey Peters. I've done a lot of trailer music, commercials, jingles. I mean, I've spun a lot of plates to pay a mortgage and raise 2 kids. But what's that?
God bless you.
Well, thank you, Donna, and God bless you. I mean, I feel like music is just, I don't know, I'm still charged by it, and I think, again, that balance of intellect and spirit that we were talking about earlier, Adam, I think that's really guided me through a lot of my life, which enables me to kind of enter into whatever it is I do, whatever project I embark upon. Also, there's a balancing act reunion that's going to take place next year. Fantastic. So Jeff and I are working on my partner in the balancing act. We're working on songs to record next year. There's always I always view every day as like a new musical opportunity.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And the fact that you mention all these people, because I think you're really highlighting that idea of the collaboration and the collaborators you've had and the ability to do that and the importance of that and the centrality of that. Because, sometimes people talk about their music or whatever, and that's fine, but they don't necessarily mention all those other people. But you've talked about all these diverse people that you've worked with and what you've gotten from them and what they've gotten from you and what you've made together.
Yeah, I really believe in the power of collaboration. I really believe in it as a guiding principle for my life. You guys were talking about ego earlier. You have to have a healthy ego to be able to survive in this world. I think we all have witnessed people who have terrible crises of the spirit and terrible battles with their own ego. But I don't have that. I have been a collaborator because I think my ego's been strong enough to be a support person, and not feel threatened or feel insecure that, like, I know what my strengths are as an artist, and I know how to be a collaborator. And I believe, there we go.
There we go. She's finally made herself known.
Hello, Lucy.
Hey, Lucy.
Hi.
There we go.
Yeah, we're definitely dog people in this family for sure. I have two.
It's about balancing act. It's a balancing.
Very good, Adam. Exactly. But like all of it, and I'm just now starting to think, well, does the world need my own my own songs and my own music? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna attend to it this year. This next year.
I applaud.
It's all part of the same thing. There's no, somebody said, I think maybe even Donna and I were talking about this years ago. There's no difference between me entering into a classroom of preschool kids and teaching them the principles of music versus like working with a legend like Leonard Cohen. To me, it's like I don't make the distinction. It's all part of bringing passion and purpose into whatever I do, and whether it's teaching preschool music to kids or whether it's playing in front of thousands of people or playing in front of 30 people or making a record or producing or writing, it's all part of the same the same creative spark that I think I bring to this world.
That's beautiful.
And yeah, just as we wrap up, this is a song. This is a question we often ask our guests. Do you want to ask the question, Donna? The usual love's a secret weapon question. I think in some ways you've already answered it in many ways, Willie, but go ahead, Donna, you ask.
Yes, Willie. What is your secret weapon?
I think I'm guided by love. I know the song "Love's a Secret Weapon," but my whole guiding principle behind life has been love. I've enjoyed it. I've given it. I've experienced it, and I have more to give.
Oh, beautiful!
Fantastic.
Thank you, Willie.
Thank you so much for
I hope to see you in California.
Oh man, please, let's make that happen.
That'll be so beautiful, and we'll have to go surprise Dominic.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Then Adam, I would love to come to Australia. Maybe one of these musical endeavors takes me up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was.
Oh, you guys have been amazing. This has been. I hope I haven't. I hope I haven't.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Lots of love to you both.
Love to you as well, Willie. See you soon, my love.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Bye, Adam. Thank you so much.
Bye, Adam, love.